Hi, my name is Errol Ozdalga. I serve as the Associate Chair for Communications for the Department of Medicine. And I want to thank Dr. Euan Ashley, our newest chair for the Department of Medicine, for being with us today to allow us to get to know you a little bit better.
Well, thanks for doing this. I'm really happy to be here.
I want to start off by acknowledging that you're a clinician. You've taken care of patients for years. You have this amazing book, Genome Odyssey, Medical Mysteries, an incredible quest to solve those mysteries. You round in the CCU, you're a cardiologist.
I do.
And you have a clinic. I know this because I've been a patient in your clinic as well. So one of the most important questions I have for you today, now that you're the chair of our Department of Medicine, can I still see you?
Yeah, of course you can. Of course you can. No, I mean, my first memory growing up was that I wanted to be a doctor. Being a doctor is part of my soul. It's not something I have an option about. I love, as you know, seeing patients and caring for them. Even though I'm going to be very busy, I will still be seeing patients in the clinic, and I will be delighted to keep seeing you.
Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to hear you're still be seeing your patients as well, still being a clinician. Your clinic is pretty awesome, and you do a lot of great stuff. You're a heart failure specialist. You're an expert in performance, athletes. Tell us more about this clinic and things that you do in it.
Yeah, well, we started somewhere around 2006 and really formalized the center in 2009. And we focus on young people with inherited cardiovascular disorders. But there is an overlap, of course, between things like dilated cardiomyopathy and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with the sorts of changes that we sometimes see in athletes. So sports cardiology, the idea that we can see athletes who obviously have pushed their hearts and the rest of their bodies to quite extreme lengths in training. Some of the remodeling that is normal that we see in athletes overlaps a little with mild forms of dilated or hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So sports cardiology has naturally had this overlap with these inherited Mendelian conditions of the heart muscle. And so that's, and then also my personal interest has often been around exercise physiology and understanding the cardiovascular system. When we were first setting up the clinic, we focused on those diseases, but also saw a number of different athletes. And so it's a really incredible opportunity to study medicine in a way that is unusual for subspecialists, which is to say we get to do family practice. We actually see multiple generations of a family. Sometimes all of them come at once, maybe from out of state or out of town. But even if that doesn't happen, over time we get to know parents and children and siblings, and being able to do that kind of family medicine, but within a subspecialist environment is just a huge privilege.
You're a big fan of soccer. I hear that's even a part of your clinic as well.
Yeah. We definitely see some soccer players from time to time, but also our lab and the group get together once a week to play soccer. Usually I try mostly not to get injured. It's an important part of what we do is to play together as well as to work together.
What drove you to decide to want to become the leader of our department, to be our chair? Was that something you always had aspired to, or what's driving that? What drove that decision?
I think I've always been drawn towards leadership, but I think leadership in the sense that I love working in teams. And if I can help lead those teams, then that's even better. But I think that life is just much more fun in teams. I think we can do a lot more collectively than we can individually. And so I've always found, no matter what the task was, I love to set big goals and try and chase after them and see if we can do the seemingly impossible. I mean, my lab would tell you that. But I think that what I then like to do is try and get in the trenches with the team and work alongside them. And so that, if you know, that is one form of leadership, and certainly my approach to that. To be able to do that at a bigger scale is just such a real privilege and the potential opportunity. I mean, we have over 2,000 people in the department. We have people doing just incredible work across all ranges of all parts of internal medicine. And the opportunity to try to help them, to try to amplify what they do, to have an even greater impact on the world. I mean, who wouldn't want an opportunity to do that? So I just feel hugely honored and privileged to be in this position and starting this new role.
Wonderful. You're born in Scotland.
Yeah, you noticed.
Your father was a general practitioner, local general practitioner, I believe.
Yeah.
Your mother, a midwife.
Yeah.
How did that, obviously you became a physician, how did that influence your choices in life and even what you do today?
I was exposed to the practice of medicine and midwifery from this very young age. As a kid, I would go on house calls with them. So my dad was actually a GP in the local town, which was a reasonably affluent area. My mom was a midwife in the area right next door, which was an area of significant underprivilege, and we lived right in the middle. So if I went this way, there was one world, and if we went the other way, there was another. And my mom and dad worked really in both of those. And so I would go out with each of them to house calls. And sometimes, of course, I'd just sit in the car, but quite often the patients would welcome me into their home, and I would sit there watching him do his work. Just really being inspired by the fact he was in some ways, part of their family. For my mom, sometimes she was dealing, of course, with much younger young mothers, sometimes even in their teens. And so I would have that opportunity to see them practice medicine. And just they really taught me how to care for other people. The idea you could combine that with other things like science and computers and tech, that came much later.
I talked to a lot of colleagues who've known you for years, and one of the things that came true was that a lot of values that you hold in patient care comes through in your book, comes through in comments about you, in caring about mentees, trainees. Is this where you get the character from, seeing your parents, the way they cared about people? Is that part of the reason why there's this theme of humanism that comes true over and over with you?
That's very kind of you to say. I mean, I feel it's somehow built into me. It's like I almost don't have a choice. I'm inspired by it. I work on it. I try to be better and be more empathetic and understand better where my patients and my mentees and others are coming from. I talked to my dad about this just a few months ago, and he told me something he hadn't actually told me in all of our lives so far, that he had a similar feeling when he was growing up, that he just wanted to be a doctor. He was from a tiny little island on the west coast of Scotland. I think no one from his high school had ever been to university, never mind to medical school. And he had this sense that he wanted to be a doctor, and he applied, he got in. His commute was wild. He would walk down to the pier, he would get on a boat, he'd get off the boat, he'd get on a train, he'd get off the train, he'd get on a bus, and the bus would take him to the anatomy lab where he would begin his day. 2.5 hours, and he'd do the reverse to get back to his island at the end of the day. And I mean, what an inspiration.
Wow. You went to undergrad and medical school at the University of Glasgow, then on to Oxford for residency. You did a PhD. You did a fellowship in cardiology, molecular cardiology as well. And then you come to Stanford you do another fellowship in cardiology here. Brought out by Vic Froelicher. What brought you to Stanford? What made the decision to leave and come here?
Vic is just such an incredible mentor to so many of us. He's Vic Froelicher, cardiologist at the VA, now an emeritus professor here. I was a medical student actually at the time when I first got connected with him, and I knew I was interested in the heart and exercise and sport, and so I wrote to a few people. I actually had contacted a heart failure cardiologist in Glasgow and said, who do you know around the world? I want to go visit, go see the world. And he gave me the names of a few people, including Vic's. And so I wrote, there was a letter at the time, this was before email, and I got a note back from all of them, and each one of them said, yes, you can come. But Vic's note was just, I wish I had kept it and framed it. It was just, I mean, he'd scribble, yes, you can come anytime we have a party here. We might be able to find some funds to help you, but not enough to buy a Ferrari. I remember he mentioned that. I came for that summer. It was the summer Netscape floated, for those of you who remember that far back in the internet. It was a big day, big time. And the energy of Silicon Valley just blew me away. Plus, I was a complete nerd. I programmed computers as a kid. And here I was in the middle of just tech central. It made such an impression on me that I was really made myself kind of a promise that if there was any way I could come back, I would try. I was able to come back as a postdoc and join the cardiology fellowship here, and I intended to stay for a couple of years. That was 20 years ago.
And here you are today.
Yeah.
I want to reference a quote that you use, chapter 10 of your book, The Genome Odyssey. There is no friendship, no love like that of a parent for a child. Henry Ward Beecher. How important has family been to you in the grand scheme of your career and your success? I congratulations, you and your wife Fiona's 25th anniversary is this weekend. You have 3 wonderful children. Your eldest daughter just starts college yesterday, I believe?
Yesterday we dropped her off.
How important has family been, despite being so busy with everything you do? You still made time for them.
No, it's been everything, and they are my everything. My kids, like I said, to get up this morning and see my sorry. To get up this morning and see my daughter's bedroom, she's not there. It's a little tough, but I'm so happy for her because she's off. Sorry.
The thing I keep hearing over and over from everybody near you is
Yeah.
how you always were there for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Despite how busy you were, you had magically found the time.
This morning, I woke up. I looked in my daughter's bedroom, and her bed is empty. She's she's actually in Greece having fun. Her first semester, she spends study abroad. So and then she'll go to Boston in January. Yeah, I'm so proud of her. Family's been such an important part. I mean, they're our roots here. And to watch them grow up and be part of the community here. We live on campus. To see them go to school in the local schools, to mix with other friends and their families that we've grown up with has really been something special. And specific to Stanford, I mean, obviously only some of our faculty live on campus, but the community there is amazing. At first it sounds odd, like you're living and working in the same spot, but can you imagine a better bike commute than to cycle across Stanford campus to come to work in the morning? I mean, I can't, and I get to do that every morning and go back every night. I just feel so lucky to have that opportunity. And then to be able to have kids grow up in this community is just really special, where you have the outdoors and all the work hard, play hard that I think is part of our culture here in Silicon Valley and in the Bay Area.
In talking with a number of colleagues who've known you, the word that kept coming up, Renaissance man. They keep saying you're a man of many talents, and I found out all this great stuff. So one thing that I think many of our faculty have known, you have the Guinness Book of World Records for the fastest sequencing, 5 hours and 2 minutes turnaround time. Yeah. You're a semi-pro saxophonist. You've traveled around the world, jazz festivals.
Yeah.
You've been in bands.
Back in the day.
You rugby. I hear you're a very good soccer player. You've coached soccer as well. Yeah. You code. You even have solved the Rubik's Cube in under 30 seconds.
Long time ago.
I promised I wouldn't bring you a Rubik's Cube in person. So I guess my question is, that's it? Right. So one of the pillars of Stanford Medicine, research.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about clinical care, but research. Right. What struck me about your research as well is you do clinical research, basic research, translational research, informatics research. You do, I mean, our researchers work very hard. I'm always in awe. You're doing all types of research. For our researchers, how can we support our researchers as they try to be successful in their careers?
I think there's a lot, because we often talk about the stresses that our clinical faculty and the stresses we have as we practice clinical medicine. But I think there are different stresses that affect those building a predominant research career. And of course, those who are trying to do both will feel the stresses on both sides, just to a varying amount. And the stresses on the research side, of course, are that, some of them are similar, like clinical medicine. It never leaves you. That knotty problem that you're trying to solve, or that experiment that just won't work, or the piece of code that just keeps breaking. That's with you when you're at work, and it's with you when you're at home, and you can't let it go until you solve it. So there are some parallels there for sure. And then in the structure of the way people have to build careers, there's a lot of differences, of course. And when we think in particular for our department and those who are building research careers in our department, there are particular transitions that are really hard, and where we will look to help as much as we can from a department perspective. For example, when you move from fellow to faculty, there's that moment when you're transitioning for the first time to be an independent principal investigator, that it's really tough. You've been trained in medicine, you've been trained in science, and suddenly you have to run this little business, a little business that does science, and you have to be head of HR and PR, and you have to run the budget, and a lot of things that maybe we don't always prepare people as well for. So we certainly are hoping in the future to be able to prepare people better for those, and to provide support, not just monetary support, but sometimes it will also be monetary support to help with those transitions. When we think about trying to ask for money from the National Institutes of Health, NIH grants, other foundations, there are lots of learnings that our more mid-level and senior faculty can pass on to our more junior faculty. We want to make sure that information flow is there and maximized. And the transition even to mid-level faculty can be tricky. So I think there's lots of ways we as an organization, as a department, can help our researchers as they build their careers. Increasingly, we are talking about team science, and that's something that's very fundamental to me. We talked about it already. Science is much more fun in a team. But plus the team is there to support you, and I think we can all be much more productive when we're working together in teams. Fortunately, Stanford's a very collaborative place, and so I think team science is something that's very natural for us here. And the department program in team science, of course, we're going to see how we can expand and move forward with working together in teams to really do impactful science, whether it's basic science in the lab, translational science coming out of the lab, clinical science, or clinical trials. We, as a department and as a university and school, are involved across the whole range. And we have people who are skilled across the whole range. But having that seamless transition for people to be able to move across those if they want to, and then move forward in the time dimension as they grow, that's something we need to think about a lot.
In your book, you're describing this meeting with the famous venture capitalist Mark Andreessen. You tell him, in the future, your genome is going to be just as accessible in the electronic healthcare record as your medication list is.
Yeah.
How close are we to that future, and what can we, as a department, with your leadership, do to get there and be part of getting there?
It's really exciting that finally we're starting to get there. One of the other quotes in the book is from Bill Gates, where he says, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but underestimate what they can do in 10. And I'm old enough now that I've lived 10 years since we started doing the genome work. And I think it's exactly right, because in the first year I thought, everybody's going to just have their genome sequenced and we'll be there in like 2 or 3 years. Of course, I vastly overestimated that. But if we look back to what's happened in the world over the last 10 years, we've gone from the point where there were single-digit number of genomes in the entire world. The first one we did with Steve Quake's genome, when we were interpreting that, he was the 5th person in the world to be sequenced. Now we're at the point where genome sequencing is a routine part of at least one segment of clinical care, which is to say rare disease and genetic disease. We literally do genome sequencing every day. In our clinic, in the department, the Inherited Cardiovascular Disease Clinic, every time we send a cardiac panel test, we're actually in the background running a genome so that the patient's whole genomes are there. And then just this year, actually the EPIC system, through Mike Pfeffer's leadership, is actually now got a module in it that understands the genome for the first time. So we will actually, over the course of just the next year or 2 or 3, start to incorporate actual genetic data in the medical record. So not just a report, not just a PDF, but your actual genomic data. And that will allow things, for example, like pharmacogenomics, just this vision that I described in the book, where as well as the system being able to look up to see if 2 medications might interact, the system will be able to look up to see if this new medication that we might be prescribing might interact negatively with your genome, and you might need a different dose or a different choice of medication. I mean, I think that's part of the future, and it's a future that's really close now. And we'll be able, as a department, I think, when we think of the just huge number of primary care physicians and those who are really in the trenches seeing patients every day across lots of specialties as well, those are the people for whom this kind of technology can really make a difference. And it can save the healthcare system money, it can save our patients from adverse effects. So there's opportunity there for us to really bring our practice of medicine up a level with the application of pharmacogenomics in medicine.
Adding to that theme of where we're going and really where we are, AI, not new to you.
No, sure.
Large language models. You've been intricately involved with the Center for Digital Health at Stanford, of course. Now we have, in the last couple of years, all of us, it's become more mainstream, that large language models like ChatGPT and so on. And then, of course, your work in genomics seems like the perfect marriage, large amounts of data. Are you becoming our chair at the perfect time where the convergence of these two are really becoming more mainstream and growing at a huge rate?
I feel like this is an incredible moment for those of us who are data nerds and feel like there's a real benefit to medicine for the application of high throughput data and high throughput science. And I do think that it's a really incredible moment to see those coming together. Genomics in some ways broke the dam, if you like, from the perspective of, I would often talk in my presentations about how in cardiology we're used to, a five-digit lipid panel. There's 5 numbers come back, and that's about the level you have to understand. Whereas a genome is 6 billion data points. But we've done that. We've moved to the point where we can wrangle 6 billion data points and then put that information in a way that can be used in everyday clinical practice. So the question is, can we do that again? And can we do it for every other modality? If you think about the effect of the ability of an AI to understand medical imaging or medical videos, and we've been pioneers of that at Stanford, can we start to incorporate the deep learning decade, if you like, of AI into everyday practice?
Mm-hmm.
And that's before we even get to the current moment, which is incredibly exciting. You mentioned large language models.
Mm-hmm.
Think about ones like GPT and Claude and these kind of models. Suddenly, we're able to actually converse with computers in a way that sometimes we can't be sure that they're not human. We've got examples of where people have done tests and asked an AI to answer a question and a doctor to answer a question, and even when the doctors look at the answers, they find the AI more empathetic. Now, I think in reality that's not because the humans are less empathetic, it's because the humans have less time. But that exact observation, I think, is the key to how we use these kind of models in medicine and how we actually help our doctors in the department and the school actually focus more on the human interaction, because we can save them time, and the time is in paperwork. If there are things that these models can bring where we reduce the burden of paperwork for our physicians and other healthcare practitioners, that could be a real revolution right there. We're not yet putting the AI kind of in a room alone with the patient. I'm not sure too many of us are quite ready for that, although because the models are available, just like Google always was, you can be sure our patients are doing that already. But I think as physicians, we're not ready to do that.
Alan Kay, computer scientist, had this quote, the best way to predict the future is to invent it.
Yeah.
That resonates with me because a lot of what you're doing, I feel like you're inventing the future with genomics work and computer science related things like we've been talking about. You just gave a lot of examples of my next question, but if I could ask you, under your leadership of the next 5 years, where do you see the department going as it relates to the things we talked about, but even in a broader scheme? Where do you think we'll be in 5 years, or where do you want to be?
I think we are just located at the nexus of so many important changes in the way medicine is practiced and science is practiced. And I think we have the opportunity, maybe more than anywhere else, quite literally on the planet, to take advantage of that and learn about it, learn how to deploy those kind of technologies carefully, and then help everyone else move forward in a cautious and I think optimistic manner. The change that will happen with the technology of language models and AI will revolutionize multiple areas. I spoke a moment ago about billing and paperwork. I do think that's where it will happen first, but I think it will start to see it everywhere else, and we'll have these AIs sitting on our shoulder as we read ultrasounds and read x-rays and CT scans, and hopefully there'll be a really collaborative movement forward together where we make the best use of the AI in the place where the AI can help. So I think medicine will change in that way for sure. I think we'll understand and be able to have more personalized approaches to medicine. And that's not just in diagnosis, thinking about your risk or the diseases you might have, which is what we've talked about with genome sequencing or the application of genomics, but moving towards therapy. So I think two of the most really exciting areas for us as a department in the next few years is cell therapy and gene therapy. And we are seeing just dramatic ability to treat conditions, cancer of course being number one, but now thinking about autoimmune disease with cell therapies that we just were not able to imagine just a few years ago with the power of that technology. We've been able to see, and again, some of this work has had its origin at Stanford, the ability to quite literally cure genetic diseases. And that's something I wasn't sure I was ever going to see in my lifetime. And yet we're only at the beginning. This is really an early generation version of gene therapy and some of the earliest versions of cell therapy. I think, again, we're in a very unique situation as a department to be able to push forward those technologies, to literally lead the world in the safe and cautious execution of the next generation of those therapies for the betterment of all our patients.
How important has been and how important will be collaboration, that theme, in your leadership in the Department of Medicine?
And I think even before directly answering that, I would say I feel so grateful to Stanford. I feel so grateful to be here at this moment in time. And I feel, we came for 2 years, we're still here 20 years later. We're here because I believe that there is nowhere on earth that we could have a bigger and greater impact on people's lives than the amplification factor of Stanford. And so part of the reason I'm so excited to have this role is because I quite literally want to give back. I really want to be able to spread that to other people. And an important part of that is absolutely collaboration. When I first started thinking about trying to get into RNA silencing, that's an approach that now is being used literally for new therapies. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about RNA silencing, but I knew somebody who did. We have a Nobel Prize winner, Andy Fire, in genetics. And so I wrote him, I have junior faculty, just fairly new, I wrote him this very tentative note, like if you could meet any time in the next 3 months, I would be willing to go anywhere, anytime, any place. Immediately. Yeah, he calls me just a few moments later. Well, the phone rings, and of course I'm a new faculty. Nobody calls me, and usually it's a wrong number. I answered the phone, and he said, it's Andy. And I was like, who do I know called that? And then realized this was Andy Fire calling, and he literally said, well, let's meet. And I was like, oh, I'm not ready to meet. I need a month to prepare. It was just an amazing moment, I think, for me in a microcosm of just the uniqueness of Stanford and the unique ability that just giants of our world are willing to open their door and meet with whoever you are. And I had the same thing when I first arrived. I met some of the giants of statistics, people whose names I'd only ever seen in textbooks. And suddenly they're in the office just over there. You could walk over and meet them, and they took the meeting. It was just amazing. And so I would love to see that for our department pushed even further. I think there's a lot of collaboration within our department, but I think also we're in the middle of this incredible university, and we're doing really groundbreaking things and impacting people's lives. And there are people in engineering who are going to help us with AI and computer science. There's people in statistics and our own QSU and other parts of our department where we already collaborate. But there's even beyond those bounds, there are people we're going to be able to work with to bring the newest and most exciting technologies towards medicine. And not just for the people who are able to get to Stanford Hospital. I think we do want to impact our own patients right here. But really our ambition is much bigger. We want to change the way medicine is done across the world. We want to have a global impact. And that's not just in the developed world, but the developing world too. And we have global health programs and others that are very strong in the department. And I believe there are technologies, maybe surprisingly, but there are technologies that can also help there. And by the application of just thinking about how we can take technologies we have to improve health and in different settings around the world, I think is something we maybe are uniquely in a position to help achieve.
How important has it been for you, and will it be for our department, as you touched on already, to collaborate not just within our group, but to expand and really reach out there?
Yeah, well, and I think industry in particular, most people in industry, we think of academia and industry as almost like two things, but in reality, they're really integrated when we're handing off to industry all the time. And increasingly, we have people who are coming back to academia from industry, and I love that. But I think if we have an idea that starts in a lab at Stanford and we want it, whether it's a therapeutic or a digital tool or diagnostic, you name it, if we want it to have an impact broadly in the world, and we do, at some point we're going to have to hand it out of academia. And that was one of the things that always grabbed me about Stanford, this ability to sort of look outside of the campus and say, well, if we want to impact people around the world, we have to find a way to do that. That can be partnering or licensing with a company. It doesn't always need to be commercial, but startups are something that are kind of in the water here at Stanford. And I've been lucky enough to be involved in several where we've taken technologies that have been invented by collaborative groups at Stanford and moved them into the commercial world, where then they can be made available to millions of people, not just the folks who are right here or at Stanford Healthcare or Stanford Children's Health. And so I think that partnership and collaboration is something that I would love to see us do even more of in the department. I've been these last few years involved with the Stanford Medicine's Catalyst program, which has been one of the vehicles through which you can take an idea and move it sort of into the outside world, take an early prototype and turn it into a product, and then potentially shepherd a company through.
I talked about one of the three pillars: research, education, mentorship. Vic Folliker, he something stuck out to me. He said, I'd never seen Euan get upset, except for if he felt that our mentees or a student was being taken advantage of or wasn't being well protected. You fiercely would protect and advocate for all our trainees.
Yeah.
We have a lot of, as you know, amazing, wonderful teachers in our community. People take the time to mentor. How can we support our mentors and our teachers to in turn support our mentees and our learners?
I think it's such an important question because teaching is sort of also in our soul. You know, it's really part of the fabric of our being in medicine. Like any of us who are practicing medicine are also, we feel like we're always learning, but then in an academic setting where we have residents and fellows and students and others, we feel like we're also always teaching. And that's good. But I think that it's also, this doesn't come for free. And if you take, half an hour at the end of a round to go through some mechanisms and think about new approaches to maybe treating certain conditions that you'd seen on a round with a group of students or a group of residents or a group of fellows, then that's time that you're not either doing your paperwork for EPIC or time that you're not at home with your family. And so I do think that we need to appreciate that, we have three missions here. We have a triple mission, and one of them is education. And so we have to recognize each of those. We think about funding and supporting clinical work. We think about funding and supporting science. And we think about supporting education. We don't always think of funding it, but if we're using people's time and they're spending their time, I really think that we have to take that just as seriously, because ultimately we're a university. This is, teaching and learning is what we do.
Someday, when your career is over, far from now, what legacy do you want to leave?
I think that we all would hope to do nothing more than leave the world a better place than when we found it, for the next generation. I mean, that's a very broad goal. I have lots and lots of specific goals. I would love to see us move medicine forward. I'd love to see us take best advantage of the incredible technology that we're able to invent, while at the same time putting at the absolute center of what we do the human element of medicine. I love the highest tech, but I also love the traditional element where we are interacting with another human, where we're laying on hands, we're listening to the sounds that their bodies make, we're trying to connect with them on a human level. I think if that philosophy was I was able to continue to sort of push that philosophy and expound that and bring our department into the future, while not forgetting this, centuries past of medicine, where we really focused on the individual human, I think I would feel that was time well spent.
We talked about those two pillars. The third pillar, patient care.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, I'm going to quote you at the very end of your book, and I quote, "The final words are for my patients. I stand in awe of them. They are the reason I get up in the morning. They make me cry. Sometimes they berate me. Sometimes they hug me.
Yeah.
I tell all our new patients, they are now part of our extended family. We walk beside them as we go through life's ups and downs." As I said at the beginning, as a patient of yours, I can absolutely tell you this couldn't be more true.
I appreciate that.
How can we support our clinicians to provide the best care in the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a privilege what we get to do, but it is a human thing at the end of the day, and it takes a toll. It takes energy. And I think that it isn't though that part that I think it generates the challenges. Of course, there's always going to be challenges, but in a sense, that's why we went into this. The challenges of caring for people, the challenges of being there for them in the hardest times, the challenges of trying to deploy the best strategies and therapeutics to make them better. I think we all signed up for that. But there's elements that are part of our daily lives as clinicians that maybe we weren't so sure that we were signing up for. Spending hours in front of a screen, doing 17 clicks to drop a bill. Maybe it's 11 now, but it's wrestling with an electronic healthcare system for many hours versus spending that time with our patients. That's not something most of us signed up for. That was one example. I think it was 17 clicks when it started, and then it was 11, and it's going down, and everything. Every time we have a renewal with the system, something improves, and we need to continue to do that more, though. Thinking about just the psychological burden and overhead of that inbox on all of us is significant, and I'm there too. That's why I will always continue to see patients. I would need to understand what we're all going through. And so I hope that from the position I'm now in, that I can help even more with that by providing my voice to thinking about how we can do that better and how we can balance our lives better. If we're thinking about growing, which we are, let's think about making sure we're covering all the services and thinking about the size we want to be and what we need to be able to perform at the same level at that size. We want to get in advance of that and build, build strategically wherever we can.
Well, you're now our chair. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
You jokingly say in your bio, conducts research on the health benefits of single malt Scotch whiskey. So my perhaps most important question.
Yeah.
What's the brand? What do we recommend?
Well, I have no sponsorship in relation to single malt Scotch. I always say it's a bit like asking someone to choose among their children. That's my usual answer. However, if I really had to take one bottle with me to a desert island, it would be Lagavulin 60.
Okay. Well, Euan, thank you so much for taking the time to share more about you personally and your career. We are so lucky to have you now as our leader for the Department of Medicine, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Oh, thanks so much for taking the time and for the conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.